Welcome to the Ravens Vail Coven. The Coven features short, independent stories with themes ranging from dark horror and fantasy to any other disturbing fiction. The Coven contains stories written outside the ongoing storyline of the Ravens Vail universe. The stories are submitted by listeners, authors, and storytellers and are carefully curated by the staff of Ravens Vail. To learn about our guidelines for submitting your story for consideration, go to www.ravensvail.com and click on the Submission tab on the menu bar.
The Ravens Vail Coven is part of our dark fantasy horror anthology podcast and may contain explicit language or thematic elements not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Our next storyteller is an East Tennessee native who draws their inspiration from the tradition and mysticism of Appalachia. As a graduate student at Eastern Michigan University, they are majoring in children's and young adult literature. With a fervent passion for folklore and fairy tales, they infuse the magic of Appalachia into their storytelling. Tonight, presenting us with an original telling of a classic that they have entitled Blue Bonnet. Welcome to the stage, Pen Hill.
To get to know a person, one of the best ways to do that is to listen to the stories that they have to tell. To get to know a culture, the same is true. I have an Appalachian interpretation of a tale that was originally from Germany, collected by the brothers Grimm, Charles Perrault, and many other folklorists over the years. So without further ado, this is Blue Bonnet. Once upon a time ago, nestled deep in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, there lived a precious, innocent girl who had a charm that could win over every soul that she met. Yet her beloved granny cherished her above all the other folk. Her granny, an old conjure woman, had sewn her a beautiful bonnet of the purest dark blue, which earned the little girl the endearing nickname Blue Bonnet. Blue Bonnet's granny lived on the far side of a thick patch of woods, hidden away in the darkest part of the holler. And every day, Blue Bonnet and her mama would take a hike through the dark forest, with baskets filled with goodies like bread, milk, sugar, and other wonderful delights for Granny, since Granny had old bones and had trouble getting out of bed most days. On this particular day, fate had other plans for Blue Bonnet and her mama. Blue Bonnet's mama was ailing, pierced to the bone by the early autumn chill. So for the very first time, Blue Bonnet would have to make the trek to Granny's house through the woods alone. Though Blue Bonnet was unafraid, for she had walked the well-worn path beside her mama plenty of times, she would obey the rules of walking in the woods that had been passed down through generations by her mama and Granny, conjure women who learned them from their own mamas and grannies. Blue Bonnet's mama, a great conjure woman who knew how to trick even the devil, left her little girl well prepared. She secured Blue Bonnet's bonnet firmly on her head and issued her a solemn warning. Remember, Blue Bonnet, to always keep your bonnet on while you're walking through the woods. It's a special kind of blue that'll keep any nasty spirits from laying any of their eyes on you. Blue Bonnet promised to keep her bonnet on as her mama delicately threaded silver bells onto her shoes and spoke another instruction. And remember, child, you gotta keep these silver bells chiming as you walk. The sweet sound of the bells will ward off any spirits trying to eavesdrop on your footsteps. Blue Bonnet promised her mama to keep her shoes on, as her mama gave her a small burlap pouch filled with aromatic herbs. The pouch was redolent of tobacco and pepper, and it tingled Blue Bonnet's nose. She knew to sprinkle these herbs at the wood's edge and every so often along her path. An old conjure trick that created a protective barrier to conceal her scent while she walked alone in the woods. Her mama listened carefully as Blue Bonnet repeated these rituals and added one more piece of guidance. And remember, Blue Bonnet, you have to keep your wits on you, let Granny know I love her, and stay on your best behavior. If you think you're lost, follow the animal marks, and never stray from the path. The spirit's grasp is perilous, and your granny and I are too aged to come looking for you if you were to wander off somewheres. Blue Bonnet made many promises to her mama that she'd follow all the guidelines and stay safe, and gave her mama a big old hug before she set off on her journey alone. As she approached the entrance to the dark woodland, she listened to the silver bells as they chimed with her every step. Her blue bonnet was fastened securely on her head, shielding her from any prying eyes from just beyond the trees. Before Blue Bonnet ventured into the woods, she could sense a presence lurking beyond the tree line. She took a moment to comfort herself, and as her mama had taught her, she unveiled the pouch of herbs. She sprinkled just a little bit before entering the woods, casting an aroma of sweet tobacco and spicy pepper that would shield her along her path. Blue Bonnet continued on the well-trodden path until she came across the crossroads that she and her mother would stop for a break at every day. Usually, the crossroads were eerily empty, without even the songs of the whippoorwill or the frogs to break the silence. Today, however, she found a colossal beast that looked like a demented deer upon the trail. It had twisted limbs and spikes along its back. Its antlers swung loose like branches of a tree, grabbing at things in the breeze. Its crimson eyes seemed to look through her, and though she whistled in astonishment, she quietened herself swiftly, mindful of the rules of the woods, her mother's teachings, and a warning that you should never whistle in the woods. "It cannot see you," she murmured. "Your bonnet keeps you hidden. It cannot hear you, Blue Bonnet. Your silver bells mask your steps, and it definitely can't smell you through the smell of the sweet herbs Mama mixed for you." With her courage renewed by the reminders of her mama's protections, she continued. The creature remained motionless as she gathered nearer, blocking most of the path forward. Blue Bonnet veered ever so slightly from the path to get past it, figuring she couldn't get lost for just one step off the path. As she walked by the critter, she swore she heard a faint whisper, quiet and chilling like a haunting echo, speak the words, "Blue Bonnet." Now, Blue Bonnet knew better than to respond, so she kept walking forward, determined to ignore the call from the critter that she was now sure was one of the spirits her mama had warned her about. She knew better than to look back over her shoulder, knowing not to acknowledge whatever the creature was, and trusted her bonnet, her bells, and her herbs for protection. Despite her curiosity, she kept her eyes forward, mostly because she didn't know if she'd want it to be there or not, if she was to look back. Blue Bonnet was anxious, but still confident in her safety. She knew the rules of the backwoods and was following them to the best of her ability. She kept her feet firmly on the path, swiftly passing one another as the silver bells chimed hastily towards Granny's house. She walked as fast as she could without breaking out into a run, for an unsettling worry gnawed at her, a suspicion that the spirit had glimpsed her, despite her blue bonnet, that it had heard her, despite the silver bells, or perhaps even smelled her through the aroma of the herbs that should have shrouded her in protection. This worry gnawed on her like a dog does a bone. The little girl did not stop at the little patch of wildflowers to collect a bouquet for her granny, or at the little creek to watch the fish swim by, because she knew not to piddle in the woods, especially when she was alone. With determined steps, she finally made her way to her granny's little cottage, and the back door of the backwoods nestled deep in the mountain holler. Blue Bonnet knocked gently on the door of her granny's cottage and discovered the latch was already lifted. She waited patiently for a response. "Go ahead and push it open," a muffled voice called from within, "and remember to take your shoes off so you don't go dragging mud all through the house." Blue Bonnet eased the door open, excited to see her granny and slipping the little shoes with the little silver bells off her feet before speaking. "Good afternoon, Granny," she greeted her. "I have brought some of Mama's treats for you, and still have half a pouch of herbs to make the trip home." "Place the basket of goodies and the herbs in the cabinet, dear," came the reply. And come here so your old granny can set her tired eyes on you. Blue Bonnet obediently stashed the basket of yummy foods and the pouch of good-smelling protective herbs away and stood at Granny's bedside. Now, Blue Bonnet, take that precious bonnet off so I can get a good look at your face. Blue Bonnet complied with her granny's request, placing her bonnet gingerly on the table beside the bed, mindful of an old warning her granny had given her. Don't you ever lay a hat upon a bed. The spirits will take it as an invitation to sleep right beside you. As she looked back at her granny, she noticed Granny looked a little different than she had before. The old woman's tired red eyes were wide with excitement. Blue Bonnet remarked, "Gosh, Granny, your eyes have grown so wide." "The better to see my darling granddaughter with," replied Granny, who was picking at her ears. "And gosh, Granny," Blue Bonnet continued, "how enormous your ears have gotten." With a snort and a laugh, Granny replied, "The better to hear my darling granddaughter with." Blue Bonnet, who was so happy to have made it through the woods safe and not alarmed at all, remarked once more, "Gosh, Granny, your nose has grown even more than your ears have." "The better to savor the delicious treats my daughter sent me to the woods," Granny said with a smile, revealing sharp, pointed teeth. Blue Bonnet's granny and her mother had told the little girl many of the conjure secrets. She had been taught the ways of the woods and the art of outwitting many kinds of spirits. Yet she was unawares that in the woods a spirit unlike the others could pilfer faces, garments, and even voices of the living folk, and that it listened at the edge of the woods for opportunities to learn. Blue Bonnet had no time to ponder such possibilities, for when she saw Granny's sharp teeth, she said, "Granny, when did you get your teeth back?" The spirit masquerading as her darling Granny replied with, "Just in time for supper." And quick as a hiccup, Blue Bonnet was no more. She was consumed by the ravenous spirit disguised as her granny. Blue Bonnet's mama would never hold her precious child or bring sweets to her own mama ever again. Instead, she'd stand at the edge of the backwoods where the untamed wilderness devoured the light of the world. She would listen for the faint echoes of their cries as they were carried as whispers on the wind. A haunting reminder that peril lurks for any who venture into the Appalachian wilderness without heeding the age-old rules of walking in the woods alone. Thank you.
Ravens Vail Coven is a production of Small Raven Media. Audio engineering and sound design by Nick Devan at Nicky D Sound. Copyrighted 2023 by Small Raven Media. All rights reserved.